Hello, everybody! We are back. It is Friday here on the Outpost Unknown YouTube channel. We are exhuming the X-Files. My name is Matthew. He's Jeremy.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome.
Yes. And we are back with another mythology episode. We are talking Colony. This is episode 40, episode 16 of season 2, directed by Nick Mark and written by Chris Carter, and interestingly, story by David Duchovny. So, X-Files does this all the time where we'll have a kind of mythology episode, and then we do 3 or 4 kind of like Monster of the Week episodes, and then we come right back to the aliens. At this point in the season, Jeremy, are you excited to get back to the alien stuff? Or are you still like, hey, I want to watch more Monster of the Week episodes? Where's your head at on that question?
I definitely don't want to see any more religious episodes in general. I'm sick of it. Yeah. I'm over it. I don't want to see any more Scully like powerless to be a help as a partner. I'm sick of it at this point. But do I want to get back to the government stuff, the aliens and the UFOs? Always. Those are the best episodes.
Yeah, those are always the episodes that, I won't say kept you coming back week after week, but it was always like the thing. Even though you were watching a really cool Monster of the Week episode, in the back of Little Matthew's mind, it was like, I want to know what's going on with this alien stuff. Like, is the next week's episode going to tell me more about the alien stuff and whatnot? And so we're finally back. We're getting Colony. Take us through it.
Well, it starts out extremely promising. Mulder is talking about his sister's abduction. I wrote big hopes with 3 exclamation points behind it. And then we get Mulder being wheeled really, really fast into a military hospital because he's terribly fucked up. And he starts talking about...
That's what I wrote. We see Mulder totally fucked up.
He's looked bad about 3 times so far, getting picked up from wherever the hell he was. But he says that he'd be willing to die because it's whatever he's dying for is proof of alien life. Like, all right, we don't know if he's going to live through it, but we got aliens. Let's do it. Titles.
Yeah. Well, because at the very end of the prologue, he flatlines. And Scully's in there, and she's like, I'm a doctor, like, I'm his partner, whatever. Because he's got severe hypothermia. Because isn't she like, you got to keep him in the cold?
Yeah, it was like, stop heating him up. You got to keep him in the cold or he's going to die. And then he flatlines.
He flatlines, and then it goes, I remember seeing that as a kid and just being kind of like, what? Because his whatever makeup they put on his eyes, he looks like he's been beaten silly. Like his eyes are all swollen up, and you hear that flat line, and it cuts to the title credits. And I remember as a kid just being like, "Okay, what is this all about?" It's always good when storytellers put something in a script or a story where you're asking yourself, how is this person going to get out of this situation? And if I, as an audience member, cannot immediately guess how they're going to get out of the situation, that's what makes for like good drama, because then you want to keep watching. You're like, all right, I want the writer to outsmart me. So I'm just sort of sitting here, and this prologue does it really well. You're like, how the hell is Mulder going to get out of this? Right? He's literally flatlining as we go to the opening credits. Loved it.
Very, very promising opening. So the next scene we get is the Coast Guard is looking at a UFO flying above them.
Hell yeah.
And they're like, oh, is it just a helicopter? No, that's got to be something else. And then it crashes into the ocean, and they're like, yeah, we gotta go figure out what I even think they called it a UFO, didn't they?
I think so, yeah.
Like they know what it was, but we never see these people again, so I suppose it's completely irrelevant. But they're like, the Coast Guard sees a UFO, it crashes into the ocean, like, we got to go retrieve that. Hard cut to a battered women's shelter. There's a doctor that's inside of it. He sees the news that they thought it was a UFO, but it was really a Russian jet. And then didn't they have like a picture of them fishing the Russian guy out of the ocean?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Why would that would never make the news
Nope.
ever?
Nope.
But they zoom in on his face, and the doctor sees Wish.com Dolph Lundgren. And he's like, "Oh no! Oh shit! This Russian guy is gonna be after me." So he leaves, but he ends up running into Wish.com Dolph Lundgren,
Yeah,
who has
immediately. Like
this.
he's already there.
He has this pokery, like he has a sharp object. It doesn't really look menacing like a knife, but it's like this retractable syringe like thing.
Yeah.
And he just stabs this doctor at the base of the neck. All of this foam starts leaking out of him, and then you've and then you find out that there's three different guys that are all doctors that all look exactly the same, and they've all been killed by somebody. And that's why Mulder and Scully come in and say that this is an X file. Though Scully does argue against it early on.
She always argues against it. It's her default mode.
And then I'm just missing a whole bunch because I started using the word foam boys. Or when they get killed by this guy within minutes of being stabbed in the neck, it almost seems to like pop them, and this green foam starts leaking out of the hole at the base of their neck, and then within a few minutes their entire body, clothes and everything, has dissolved into this acidic foam.
Yeah. Now Mulder and Scully are hanging out investigating this stuff, and we don't know this yet, but they're not even supposed to be there. Like they have no permission to be doing any of this stuff at all. And what comes back to bite Mulder is he's talking to another FBI special agent, and they're looking for this other doctor, which we will find out, or they're all clones. And he tells this special agent, like, "Hey, man, go to this guy's house and go check on him for me and see if he's there or whatever. I'm gonna go off to. I don't remember what Mulder is doing. He's going, and basically this FBI agent shows up and finds Wish.com Dolph Lundgren, tries to shoot him. All this green goo starts spewing out of him, and something happens, and then that FBI agent, we find out, dies. But the Wish.com Dolph Lundgren, we learn, can then shapeshift. So now he is shapeshifted into that FBI agent, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yep,
Yep.
yep.
And then starts interacting with Mulder and Scully and all of that stuff. So
Before they see the pile of the dead foam boy inside the house. And
yeah,
it,
yeah.
there was it was about this point that I realized, how did Mulder get the dead body photographs of the previous three if they just pop and turn into foam within like 5 minutes of being stabbed?
Voodoo.
That's right.
Residual voodoo.
Yep. All right. You know what? I call it fair. It plays. Okay, so Skinner gets involved because they meet this shape-shifted FBI guy, not realizing that the real FBI guy is dead in the trunk.
Yeah.
The shapeshifter guy that's been killing all these doctors, these foam boys, he takes off, and then Skinner calls Mulder back because somehow Skinner is aware that that the FBI agent that Mulder was just working with was dead before Mulder would have gotten word about that. I don't see that happening, but like he was completely blindsided by it.
Well, if Mulder was like traveling back to DC for whatever reason, and
Oh
then
yeah,
somebody calls up Skinner like, "Hey, this happened." By the time Mulder lands, he might not know.
maybe it's pretty thin, but
Oh.
anyway, he gets back and he's like, I thought, that I've been allowed, or now that the X Files are open, I thought that I've been allowed a great deal of freedom when it comes to
Yeah.
some of these more mysterious things. And that seems to be the case, unless it starts costing the lives of FBI agents. And that, I think, was what was pissing off Skinner. In
Oh
previous
yeah.
episodes, when Skinner was dressing him down, it always seemed like it was part of the conspiracy, part of the government keeping their boots on the neck of these mysterious things so that the truth won't come out. This one was just, Mulder, you fucked up, and one of our guys died,
Yeah,
and
because
that
Skinner tells him
completely.
it was you who told that FBI agent to go to that location. Like you're on an unofficial investigation, and you told this guy to go there, and now he's dead. And Mulder's like, What are you talking about? I just spoke to this guy. Well, like we were at the house, we left together or whatever." And Mulder's completely confused because Skinner's like, "Now my ass is in the fire, right? Because it's not just you. Now they're asking why have I allowed you to just go off on this unofficial thing outside of proper channels?" And Mitch Pileggi is great at playing that asshole, strict, stern boss. And so when he's like dressing Mulder down, it just feels real. Like it's like, okay, they're like, well, you can even see it on David Duchovny's face. He's like, I'm in some shit now. I'm in some shit here.
But it was completely justified. Every bit of anger he had to express
Yeah.
was completely justified.
Yeah.
So, but he tells him that he's on thin ice, but not quite shutting down the X Files again. Thin ice. And then I don't remember what happened between there and this dude that just shows up and says
Yeah.
he knows something and has to
So
talk to. Go ahead.
yeah, so that dude turns out to be like this CIA agent, and he tells Mulder and Scully about the whole backstory of these Russians cloned all these doctors, and were doing like when you say that, like he took out they took out their genetic material or something and was able to clone all these people, but now the Russians are coming back, and it's like they're I don't know, kind of like a super soldier type guy who's going around trying to eliminate all evidence that this thing ever happened. And so the CIA guy, they start, Mulder and Scully start blindly trusting this guy. Well, I should say Mulder starts blindly trusting this guy because there's this great scene where Scully's like, "Whatever happened to trust no one?" And Mulder's like, "Oh, I changed it to trust everyone. Didn't I tell you that?" But Mulder gets like super pissed off at her that she's questioning that this random quote unquote CIA agent that they just met 3 minutes ago, that Mulder once again just blindly believes everything that this guy says. And Mulder's like, "Oh no, I looked into his background and he's legit and stuff like that." But Scully is rightfully like, "I don't trust this asshole." So
But
I
he
like
hadn't. Mulder doesn't even mention until later that he looked into this guy's background in order to confirm his legitimacy. At
yeah.
this point, when they're initially just listening to and subsequently acting upon the Russian clone fucking story, like the way he talks, it sounds hokey as fuck.
Oh
But
yeah, but
Mulder just
he just believes
slurps
it.
it up.
Yeah. Now Mulder is technically correct. The guy really was a CIA agent. However, what he doesn't know is that this alien has killed him and shapeshifted into him. So the credentials and stuff all check out. So like Mulder did his stuff. He's like, no, this guy is legit. They just don't know he's a shapeshifting alien at that point in time,
Sure.
that he's been dead.
We cut to one of these other doctors that's kind of on the run. He's hanging out with dollar store or sorry, wish.com Jodie Foster, but he has one of those labs that has the people in the tanks from Erlenmeyer Flask.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so maybe it has nothing to do with Russian clones at all. Maybe we're back to the alien people that could like get shot, jump off of tall buildings, jump into water and stay underwater for hours. Like, okay, we're back to this instead of it being Russian clones.
Yeah. Is this the sequence when the guy jumps out the window?
Yeah.
Like he
Yeah.
just goes head first out the window, like 5 stories down, splat, and then Scully watches him just get up and run. And then there's this extended chase sequence. I don't know what it is with Chris Carter liking chase sequences in his stuff, but Mulder gets hit by this car, flies up, slams into the windshield. The whole windshield just shatters. And then like he rolls off, and Scully's like, "Hey man, you okay?" And he's like, "Just got the wind knocked out of me. I'm fine." I just laughed out loud at that. I was I think he'd have some broken ribs at the very least. The
Sure,
way that that
something,
windshield
a
shattered.
sprained wrist, you know.
Just got the wind knocked out of me.
So they do the chase thing, and then the the informant, the bounty hunter informant guy, or sorry, the CIA agent, I guess is what he is, just suddenly stands up from behind a dumpster,
Yep.
like,
Like Daredevil.
yeah, but not dressed like him. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I can't even remember what his lame ass excuse was, but they was like they just went up on the roof."
Yeah, he was like, he just
Uh,
got away. I couldn't get him. He hopped the fence or something. I wasn't able to get him in time. And
but
Scully's
then
looking at this guy very skeptically.
yeah, because she sees the fire escape is at least a 20-foot leap, although
Yeah.
that's not the weirdest thing that's ever happened on an X File is a guy leaping 20 feet. But she looks around the edge of the dumpster. She sees the remnants of a foam boy just melting into a drain. I thought that was cool because they did this little nod to Gremlins, it looked like. The way the green sauce was bubbling into
Oh
a
yeah.
drain. It looked
Yeah.
like the gremlin at the very end that went into the tub.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah. I agree.
Um, and then we get back to Skinner, and he's about to start yelling at him again, but or he thinks Skinner's about to start dressing him down about some shit. It was kind of a sudden thing, but no, he's
Yeah.
like, no, your dad called and said that there was a family emergency.
Yeah, and then
Weird.
you're like, oh, we're gonna get to meet Mulder's parents here because we've heard. I think there was at least one episode in the past where like a mention of Mulder's dad was done, but we've never actually seen him before, him or his mom.
But it was just so vague. It felt like somebody was trying to pull him off the case, you know?
Yeah,
Like go hang out with your dad for a weekend so he can move this UFO or alien body or whatever it is that they're trying to get rid of. He calls his dad, and his dad says, just like everybody, and this is why. This has got to be why, outside of voodoo, why Mulder believes all of this bullshit out of hand when it just comes from a random person. Because his dad, when he talks to him on the phone, says the most vague fucking things just to string Mulder along. This Mulder has been gaslit by his father all his life to just buy into it. If this is how what their relationship is like, that's just who he is, and that's why he buys into
yeah, yeah.
it.
Because Mulder's like, well, what happened? What's going on? Uh just show up.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
come out, come talk to your mother.
and I've told my mom this. Sometimes my mom will just text me, just says call me. I was like, don't ever do that because when you just text call me, I'm like, is there some emergency happening here? Like is it
Yeah,
something you don't want to talk about? It's like, tell me the context. Call me. I want to talk about blah blah blah. Okay, but don't just randomly say call me or show up, because I'm like, what the hell happened? You start freaking out. And David Duchovny actually plays this really well, I thought, in terms of like showing genuine concern for something going on because we don't really see much of any of his family at all. I mean, he talks about his sister, how his sister was abducted, but this is the first time I feel like we've actually ever seen Mulder uh, not only interact with his family, but have to directly confront his family. And he seems genuinely worried and concerned. So, I thought he played it really well.
sure. What do I have here? Oh, there's this great quick shot to where the bounty hunter is tearing apart the previously mentioned Erlenmeyer flask style lab, and there's this bag sitting on the floor that he takes this like smiling step on, and it just squirts out all of this green goo. I'm like, all right, that looks really gnarly. Why do this? Why did I need to see this? I don't care. I loved it.
Yeah.
Cuts back to or Mulder getting to his dad's porch, and there was this weird cigarette smoking man swap thing
Yeah.
because you just see the side profile of his dad in the dark, and he lights a cigarette, and it looks briefly like the cigarette smoking man,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
he stands up, and it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah. And I won't say like I remember that from as a kid, but I feel like I have a recollection or a feeling that when I first saw it, there was a moment where I was like, "Holy shit, is his dad the cigarette smoking man? Like, is that going to be the twist?" Now we find out more as seasons go along what the cigarette smoking man's relationship is and all of this and Mulder's family and whatnot. But I think that was definitely intentional
Sure.
to to make the audience think that that was probably him briefly.
But you also get the impression that mom and dad aren't with each other anymore.
Right.
That they still have some sort of relationship where he can show up and comfort her, but that they're not together. And that the reason that they called her is because Mulder's sister is back. And Mulder's
Yeah.
sister is in the house talking to mom.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
That
I
was a
don't
big deal. That was a big deal. I remember that as a kid, like Mulder's sister showing, because that's the whole foundation of this show is him trying to find out what happened to his sister. That motivates everything that he does. And so when it's just like, oh yeah, your sister is in the living room and now she's an adult and stuff like that, I still remember as a kid just being like shocked. I was like, really? Like, I guess we're 40 episodes in now, so this would be about the time you would introduce something like that. But I remember having no idea where this was going to go now.
but oh yeah, and it's not only his sister, but it's Wish.com Jodie Foster
Yep.
from earlier in the episode.
Yep.
They don't the reunion wasn't what I wanted it to be. I remember it being such a big deal when I was a kid, but now that I've watched their reunion scene as an adult, I'm like, this kind of doesn't
They,
have even the emotion of like when he's having the recollection of his sister being abducted out the window. That had more like drama to it
yeah.
and feelings to it than their reunion at this point. So
Well, they cut away. That's the thing. Like, and again, I blame Chris Carter for this. This is another episode written by Chris Carter, where I actually think it's kind of cool that David Duchovny kind of had the story of this. I just wish that maybe he would have wrote it rather than Chris Carter, because Chris Carter's problem as a writer is he cuts away from things when he shouldn't, and he writes really stupid dialogue a lot of times. Like he'll have some cool concepts and ideas, but he's not someone. He kind of reminds me of the criticism that people have of George Lucas of the prequels. The ideas are great in the prequels of what he's trying to say about how democracies fall and how people can switch and go evil and stuff like that. All the concepts there are really cool, but sand, it gets everywhere. Like the dialogue is awful. And so
sure.
Chris Carter's kind of that way with this. And in this particular scene, I agree with you. I watched it. You see Mulder kind of look in the window. He sees her, and then it like cuts to him like putting his mom to bed,
Yeah.
and it is like, it's really her, right? And he's like, seems to be. I don't know who else it could be. It's like, really? Like you needed that moment of
Yeah.
him going in and really like embracing her and like breaking down and what a normal human being would do in that situation. If your sister disappeared 30 years ago or whatever and suddenly just appeared, you'd have those conflicting emotions like, well, wait a minute, we need to prove this. I can't just take this at face value. I know there's all kinds of shit going on, people after me, people trying to kill me and stuff. Maybe someone just fucking with my family here. He just again takes it at face value with like no emotion, and that's bad writing on Chris Carter's part.
I also think that they didn't in the middle of this scene they cut to a scene where Scully is running away from or the bounty hunter, like in civilian clothes.
I don't
I think
remember.
I think between the bed scene, like he looks through the window and he sees his sister talking to his mom, and I think he comes in the house and they see her face, and then it cuts to this whole other thing that's going on with Scully is running away from somebody. Like she knows that she's running away from somebody that's involved. She thinks it's probably the Russian spy. She ends
Yeah.
up finding a baby in a bag. I think that was just right after the
I
Scully or the Mulder's talking to his, because it cuts back from her. She was on a bus and
yeah,
she sends him a voicemail saying out loud like, "I have all this information for you." Like she's
yeah.
baiting the killer or
It
something.
well pans over and the bounty hunter is just right there, like reading a newspaper, watching her.
Yeah. And then it cuts back to Mulder putting his mom to bed. Like you can't cut away from that whole situation and just, change gear real quick and then strip that gear and change back
Yeah,
to that. And he puts his mom to bed, he walks out, he talks to his sister because she's sitting on the front porch where the dad was, I think.
yeah. They do have a moment, and she mentions like, "Oh, you want to play Stratego?" There's little tiny things that are kind of neat here. Like I like the idea because the fact that she knows that they used to play Stratego together. Okay, that would be a piece of evidence that that's the real Samantha Mulder, right? But it's just such a throwaway line before they immediately get into that guy's an alien bounty hunter and he's coming down, he's killing all these guys, and then he's gonna
Yeah.
come kill me and blah blah. You needed more. I mean, we've had almost 40 episodes building to this, and Chris Carter chose to not show it. It's like that Godzilla movie from 2014 or whatever. I remember sitting in the theater and Godzilla finally comes out of the water, and you're like, "Oh, sweet!" About to watch him wreck shop, and then it cuts to across the country, someone watching on a diner television what Godzilla's doing in Tokyo or whatever. I'm like, "Why are we here? I
No.
want to be in Tokyo
No.
watching this." It's like it's that kind of storytelling that is just kind of clown shoes amateur hour. And unfortunately, Chris Carter gets to write so many of these like very important mythology episodes because it's his baby, right? And I'm just like, oh god, with if you would have had a better writer on this, the episode could have been so much more than what it was.
But we got what we got. And I have conflict, or the Stratego thing, like when they were playing Stratego as she got abducted, if I remember correctly. That would have been in the original abduction report when the kid was talking, or when
True.
young Mulder was talking to the police about what had happened. He has since been known to like write for UFO magazines as a pseudonym or
Yeah.
under a pseudonym. So he's probably written many stories about this abduction, about how he used to play Stratego with his sister or was playing it that night. And that was the only thing that she had to say about their past. And we as the audience are just supposed to accept, oh, okay, this is the real one.
Yeah.
No. No, just a dossier about your true situation read by anybody in this government entity that's like been fucking with you since the beginning of the show would be aware of just that one fact.
Yeah.
And if that's all you need to say to get your trust, like get out of here. But you're right.
Yep.
She does start trauma dumping about how she's being stalked by a bounty hunter from space, and that we get back, or right after saying that, we get back to Scully finding a baby in the bag while she's on the run from this bounty
Yeah.
hunter.
It's cool when it moves.
It is,
She's like, "Oh god."
but then she gets tackled by the bounty hunter guy, which is still unclear why he was chasing her. Like,
Well, I think he was chasing her because she was trying to find the remainder of the Gregor clones. So he was basically using her to find the rest because there's like four more that he's got to kill. And then, of course, Scully kind of leads him right to them.
oh right, right, but one of the doctor. Okay, no. Doesn't she find the baby in the bag, and then one of the clone doctors are there,
Yeah.
and it's not the alien bounty hunter, but
So, well,
it's
I
just
don't remember who tackled her, but or if she got tackled at all. But she's there. She finds the baby, and then one guy comes out. It's one of the Gregors, and then she looks, and then like the other three walk in behind him. But the bounty hunter gets there because he followed Scully, and
right,
she
right.
she she said to everybody on the bus where she was going and what she found with all those people on the bus.
And then, well, there's a comedy of errors at the end here because they get these guys underneath or in custody and say, maximum security, lock them away in their own separate cells, zero visitors. So maximum security means that the first uncredentialed dude that walks up and says, "I want to see these guys," the dude just
Yep,
lets him in.
lets him in.
He
Seems
he
like poor writing to me.
he he pokes some necks, and or apparently behind closed doors, and then I can't remember why I wrote down, but it seems like there's multiple bounty hunters
No, I
because
think
you
there's only
see,
one. He's just
well,
shape shifting.
right, but the scene between him going to do the four doctors that were locked up and him showing up somewhere else near Fox or Scully was like, that's too quick.
Well, I don't think he's by Mulder because basically he kills those dudes, and then Scully heads home, and then there's a knock on the door or whatever, and it's Mulder at the door, and that's when Mulder
Yeah,
calls.
that's it. That's what. Okay, so the bounty hunter is with the shape shifting bounty hunter is with the guys and killing the doctors at the moment, or at least in the timeline of the show, at the same time that Scully is going home. And then all of a sudden, she gets a call from Mulder, but Mulder is standing at her door. So the bounty hunter is there instantaneously.
Yeah, it's unclear like what the time jump is because it
True.
is like even early on when like the doctor is like watching the news thing of pulling the bounty hunter out, and then boom, suddenly the bounty hunter's at the hospital and knows exactly where that guy was supposed to be and everything. The time jumps, they're not executed very well.
You're right. And
And then
then
yeah,
to be continued.
yeah. So Scully's got a horrified look on her face as she's looking at Mulder in her apartment, and Mulder is talking to her on the telephone. So to be continued. So, all right, your thoughts on part one, Colony?
Definitely left me thirsting for more. It used a lot of the most interesting things out of the previous season as far as the alien clone storyline, the Erlenmeyer Flask stuff. We got to see a UFO. We got to meet
Hmm.
Mulder's sister. So this episode had all of the things I wanted in it, except for somebody that's not Chris writing it.
Yeah, and I think that is the biggest thing that I take away rewatching this as an adult compared to when I was a kid. When I was a kid, all of this was awesome. I did not give a shit about the bad writing. I didn't think about the weird time jumps. I didn't think. I just thought alien bounty hunter running around killing all these people. How is Mulder or how are Mulder and Scully going to get out of this sort of thing? I mentioned at the prologue where we kind of see Mulder flatlining. I was like, how is he going to get out of it? This also ends great, where it's like, how is Scully going to get out of this? Right, as a viewer, you absolutely want to see the next episode now because you want to, in your heart of hearts, Scully's going to get away somehow, but you want to see how the writer writes that to get her out of the situation. All of that stuff is really good. The concepts in here are really cool. The fact that David Duchovny kind of came up with this story and brought in kind of like, hey, alien bounty hunters, and let's bring Samantha back and stuff. I like all of it. My gripes with it as an adult, it's like it doesn't quite hold up to scrutiny in terms of the writing of it. It's just again some poor dialogue. The pacing of it is weird. It feels kind of all over the place. I know X Files is known for not really explaining things in great detail, but suddenly there's an alien bounty hunter. I would like I would like there to have at least been some sort of semblance of an explanation, or at least give me a direction as to why suddenly an alien bounty hunter flew in from outer space, crash landed, and so he couldn't land his ship, but suddenly he can go around and find all these doctors and kill them. It's almost a little too convenient. the way the plot goes and everything like that. But again, it's setting up the greater mythology and all of these things that sort of pay off more down the road. So I won't hold too much against it in that respect. But I like the episode. I think it's cool getting back to this. I'm very excited to see the next episode, to sort of see where it goes, because I don't remember. I remember there being like, is it a submarine in the Antarctic or something like
That
that?
was
And they go up
I
there.
think that was in the movie, wasn't
Was
it?
that the movie? Okay. Well, that was my recollection, but we'll see when we get
But
to the next episode.
I know that that had everything to do with this. This leads, well, I guess not spoilers, but I remember that this particular angle ends up evolving into some of the best stuff about this show. Some of the best parts of the movie,
Yeah,
ultimately, the season enders and the season openers around that movie. Like, there's some great stuff on the horizon because of what we're seeing in this episode.
for sure, for sure. It's a good episode, for sure. So some fun facts here. As in all other episodes of the X Files at that point, the casting process took 8 days. Megan Leach, the woman who portrayed Samantha Mulder, did, according to Frank Spotnitz, a quote phenomenal job unquote. I never thought that she was that great as Samantha Mulder, honestly. But Leach returned to the X Files over the years to portray Samantha, or one of her many clones. She had a lot of lines which she felt were, quote, very hard and, quote, specific. I would disagree with that. I think she's being nice to Chris Carter there. I don't think her lines were that. I'm being chased by an alien bounty hunter. Um, let's see. Brian Thompson auditioned for the role of the bounty hunter in a casting session where he was competing with another actor. Frank Spotnitz and Carter did not have much time to cast this character, but they knew this casting would be important since he intended to be a recurring character. Thompson was chosen, according to Spotnitz, because he had, quote, a distinctive look, unquote, about him, most notably his face and mouth. After casting him, they told Thompson's agent that Thompson needed a haircut because at the start of the alien bounty hunter was supposed to be kind of a military pilot who'd been shot down. But when the day came that Thompson came to Vancouver, there had been some quote unquote misunderstanding, and he hadn't been told of the crew cut. So the hairstyle seen in the episode was a compromise of sorts. Carter said that while Colony was a crystallization of the series' mythology, and it came about inadvertently following David Duchovny's suggestion to face an alien bounty hunter, thus he sat with the actor and decided to also add Mulder's disappeared sister. The alien weapon, described by the cast and crew as the ice pick, was done with an air hose that ran through Brian Thompson's arm. To create a unique and otherworldly sound by the weapon used by the hunter, several sound effects were considered before co-producer Paul Radwin voiced the noise himself on a microphone. And then Carter had initially wanted to set the first season episode Ice at the North Pole, but this was too ambitious at the time. Colony provided an opportunity to create an episode using such a setting. Um, so there you go. There's some fun facts about Colony. Um, yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, this is a must-watch. If you're at all interested in the greater mythology of X Files going forward, you kind of have to watch this episode because, like Jeremy said, everything kind of spins out from here. This is where it kind of really blossoms outward. Surprised that X wasn't in this episode. Were you expecting him here?
I was, but we still have a continuation episode, so I'm betting he shows up in the next one just because he showed up in the previous one. So
Cool. Yeah, and the other interesting thing about this that I kind of noted was this is episode 16. There's still 8 more episodes left of this season. This kind of felt like the first part of a season finale to me while I was watching it. So, yeah, just kind of interesting to me that they kind of put this almost mid-season in a way. But yeah, we'll see where it goes. So, find out. Join us next Friday here on Outpost Unknown as we check out the next episode of this two-parter, and we find out what actually happens. How did Mulder flatline? That is the big mystery going forward. Until then, hit that like and subscribe. Leave a comment down there if you want us to address something down the line. We record these like 4 episodes at a time, so it might take us a little bit to get to answer your comments. But if you have a question for us, feel free to leave it. And until then, we'll see you next Friday.